My truck broke down again on a day when it's negative 20 Canadian degrees. So on this episode, the Ford is broken again. Yeah, a Ford part is broken, actually. The starter. I will show you what I mean. So I'm about to show you what's wrong, but I'd just like to mention, it had a starter problem in the beginning. I don't know if you guys remember when we first bought this truck, they had like a relay out and they just like crossed some wires or something, and they had the starter just, you turn the key and it just keeps starting till it starts, and that ended up wrecking a starter when it was at Diesel Doctor, the shop that it was at. So Diesel Doctor, they fixed, well, they just, first they replaced the starter, just straight up swap one, swap the other one. Because it was stuck and the truck, I guess, wouldn't start, they burned out like 2 or 3 starters trying to get it to work. So they ended up shimming it, and it's worked since then until today. And so either, my guess is it always started, but my guess is it still wasn't quite shimmed properly. So I guess we'll have to look into that. Hopefully it's not something extreme like teeth are worn off on something, because the starter still makes noise. I'll show you. So it like grabs for a second, seems like it, but it sounds like a hair dryer. So yeah, we'll I guess drag it to the hoist and then lift it up and see what we can see. So we got it up in the air. We're gonna take the starter off now. It's straightforward, but I know some of those bolts are gonna be hard to, the ones on the back side are gonna be pretty hard to get at, so we'll probably be back in an hour. So I'm no expert in starters, just like everything else I'm not an expert in, but pretty sure it's not supposed to be like that. Move. We don't even have to take that bolt out now. It's only being held in by 2 bolts, not 3. So this is the new starter for a 6.4 Power Stroke. It utilizes the Power Stroke starter. So we don't 100% know what's wrong. We have an idea. So I'll just open this up, make sure I got the right one, and we'll show you the carnage from the other one. Plus I gotta return a core. Beautiful. So if I go like this, and I go like this, they should look exactly the same from the front. And you can see, like this one had 2 washers on it. This one from the front had washers on it. Not sure why, but it was, yeah, it was shimmed all whack. Our theory right now is that inside, I'll show you, this whole piece sits inside a hole, basically, in the adapter plate bell housing there. And there is a little bell housing bolt that is sticking through. I don't know where it would sit on here, but it's the threads go past where it threads in, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters. So I think they were having problems So it's hard to say. Let's say my hand is the thing. So if they were hitting a bolt, the tighter they go, the more it would twist. So they had to shim it out. So it might have not have been riding, like let's say they had to shim it out 1 millimeter because it was hitting 1 millimeter of that bolt. So I think that's why they had shims, that's my theory. So if we get rid of that bolt, it should just sit flush. That's our theory. So basically all the stress was on one little point like here. So none of the ears would sit flat. So they had shims, but if the shims aren't quite right, it's more stress and eventually that happens. That's our theory for right now. So going along with my theory, because I think the shims still weren't quite square. If they actually shimmed it properly, even with that bolt, it should have worked fine. You just won't have as much teeth surface area, which I don't think it needs all of it anyways. But going with my theory, if one part was shimmed out more than the other, the bolts wouldn't go in straight if you go really tight. And that theory works because it might be really hard to see on camera, but it is bent a little bit, both these bolts. These are the 2 bolts that go in from the motor side back towards the transmission. This one probably wouldn't have been sitting straight either, but there's no way you can bend a bolt like this with your hands, with hand force, unless you're using like a breaker bar. So that one's fine. I do have to get 2 new bolts though. So we're on vacation, we always go to Harbor Freight. So we got this little sucker. It's supposed to be like made by some German company and rebranded with Harbor Freight's Earthquake brand. We'll see if there's any that this can't take off, but my electric one can, then the electric one's more powerful. I should also say this one's rated for 700 foot-pounds, and that one's rated for I think 1200 or something from them. So fake spec. So. Ooh, that's too fast. I'm surprised it took them all off. You at least usually have like 2 or 3 that you can't get off with an impact. So this thing is maybe better than my electric one. Not sure, we'll have to test it yet. So we're taking the wheel well out so that we can potentially get the starter in a lot easier through just on top of the frame here. Maybe, or at least we can put it in at the bottom and have someone hold it up here, and you can get the bolts in easier at least. It'll help one way or another. So we took the wheel well off, tire off, obviously you saw all that. It's really easy to do if you have all the right tools with you. It's really easy to get at, like the starter, it will still have to go through the bottom, but once you have it, someone holding it up, it's really easy to get the bolts in. It'll be really easy to put the wires back on, so definitely recommend, taking the wheel and the wheel well out. And we're still not totally sure what our problem was with the starter breaking, so we're gonna actually wait till, we're filming this on a Saturday, we're gonna wait till Monday when our worker comes, because he's not totally sure on it either, but he has a lot more experience with this than we do. So we're gonna do that, mocking up, seeing what's exactly wrong with him. But that's what you deal with when you buy used vehicles. If you don't like that, you could spend $95,000 on a new truck. So the one the one hole feels a little off, so we're gonna just figure out what size thing we need. We're gonna tap it. Actually getting it pretty far. So between whoever built this truck originally and the shop that worked on my truck that couldn't quite figure it out, I mean, they made it work for the 5 or 6 months it was on there, but we almost 100% figured it out, or at least some of the problem. There's actually more than one problem we were running into. So the first one being, if Chris comes around, I'm going to show you on this little diagram. you have to grind this down, which is done. That's fine. They also make you grind a piece like that off for the adapter plate to fit. However, I don't think it says anywhere here at all. But this actually sticks out like of the block too far this way. So you have to grind this whole area down probably, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 millimeters, at least till it's flush with the piece of the adapter plate that sticks out. So before, like if this is the adapter plate, that little square block was sticking like this. So you have to grind it flat so it's even with the adapter plate, and that gives you enough room for the starter, because the starter's as wide as the adapter plate, so your engine can't stick over top of that adapter plate coming this way. So we did that. It's lining up good now. However, I believe we were right. We're just figuring that out now. There is a bell housing bolt there that's stuck through a little bit too far. Whether it's the wrong bolt altogether or some of them are different. So when they had all those bolts out to swap the motor, they put them in the wrong order. One of them might be a little longer, I don't know for sure. But we just put a washer on one of the bolts, and it should be fine now. And the other thing, also, like there's nothing about the starter in this book, unless the page is ripped out or something, or this is just a really old version of the DCS manual. So these are the Ford bolts. One looks a little different. So these are the 2 Ford starter bolts that go through from the motor side towards the transmission. So they both go like this. And because the adapter plate adds thickness, these bolts aren't quite long enough. So if normally half the threads are on, now we have to add the thickness of the adapter plate where the starter sits. So we're only getting like 1 or 2 threads. I actually went out and bought these bolts this morning. So now we're stuck finding these funny bolts that are whatever, a centimeter longer thread. Because it'll hold now, but it's probably not strong enough having only 3 or 4 threads on there. So we found one bolt. Our mechanic that's helping us through all this, he's finding another one right now. I hope DCS has this updated or they change something, because 2 of us read through this and we do not see that part in there. So, and I have heard of people struggling with starters on these conversions in the past. So that's the quick fix, I guess. Make sure you grind that block. Make sure you have long enough bolts. I would hope the kit originally came with the right bolts, because I really hope no one's running these. So hopefully the kit comes originally with it. I know the ones we pulled out are these. They're slightly bent, probably because the starter was hitting the block, but they're actually the right length. You need like that length of threading, so yeah. So we think we got it all together properly. So I'm gonna lower it down, and then batteries are probably low, so we're gonna hook them up and then see if it starts. We also have a fuel problem though, so starter might go, but the engine might not fire.
Again? Try it again.
I'm gonna crack the front filter again and see if we can get air out of this time. So the problem is when we try to bleed, as you saw there, I got it tight by hand, but it's still leaking because when the pressure goes out, it pops the gasket off, so you can't get a seal. So I just took the thing off, put the gasket on, put it up tight, turn it back to where I know it's gonna leak stuff out. Because now that it's set, you get it. Just comes back. So we just got the truck running. That's just my dash cam turning on. It's almost like the battery now. The lights did come on. I turned it once and just went dead. And it's -20 outside today. And I just covered my gloves in diesel, so I didn't bother bringing them. Okay, it's definitely something electrical or a sensor that's not letting me do something. Because we had the same, like it won't let me shift because there's no electrical going to the dash. We had that when our battery was disconnected. So they're both connected. Does this turn on? That turns on. So there's no electric going to